From the people who brought you Everdell comes a outer space survival game. Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we are taking a look at a brand new game from Starling Games, and that's Exoworld Survival. So Starling Games is best known for bringing us Everdell. This is a far cry from Everdell. This is nothing like Everdell. This is not Far Shore 2.0. This is something very different. But let me tell you what this game is a mixture of, or what it gives me feelings towards. This feels a little bit like Robinson Crusoe. This feels a little bit like terraforming Mars. There's even a little bit of Marvel Champions in here, and I'm going to explain why I feel this way here in just a minute. So let me give you a quick overview of how to play the game. This is not going to be an in-depth full how to play. This is just going to go over basically what you're seeing here on the table. So your objective is to colonize a specific planet or star. I don't know what they're called. The one we have here, the introductory scenario, is Proxima Centauri b. So I think that's a star. And when you land on the star, and this is one of the highlights of the game, is that everything about setup is different. So this particular one says you are starting where the oxygen is actually being taken away. Water is evaporating. You're losing food, and your energy's kind of stable. So these are your production levels in the circles. Okay? Well, over here in the squares is your actual supply. So if your production level is at a -2, every round your supply is going to go down, whether you spend it or not. If it's at 0, you're at a baseline and you're good. Or if you're at a positive, you can actually gain these resources. You're producing more than you need, so you can stock them up into your supply. To win the game, you simply need to get all of these tokens, production level tokens, at 0 or higher. You have stabilized that environment, and it can now grow and prosper, and you can move on to a different one. There's actually a ton of these different scenarios on these very nice large size cards. There's all of this super technical information on here. I guess these are actual planets and stars in the solar system, but there's a fun little bio. Basically everything you need to know here is on the back, and this changes the setup. It changes the environment for every game. So let's talk about what else it changes here by taking a look at this card. It gives you the initial production levels and initial supply levels. So you can see I set all of my supplies at 15. It has ambient conditions, which for this scenario is very basic, 111, but there's no humidity. Some cards will reference the ambient conditions and say, okay, increase your water supply by the amount of humidity. Well, if you have no humidity, you're not increasing your water supply at all. But in another scenario, humidity may be 3. It may be a very moist planet. And so you would, by playing that card, be able to increase it by 3. It also is giving you the amount of protocol cards you can add to this deck at the beginning of the game. Protocol cards are like wilds. And I'll get back to what they are wild for here in a second. And it also tells you how many face-up cards are always available on in the little market here. So these cards you can always draw from or choose from on your turn as an action, or you can choose the face down one here. So the more cards you can see, the more cards you can see. It also gives you a normal scenario event and a critical scenario event. So over here we have our event cards. And this is a mixture of kind of standard events and critical events. But there's always going to be a mixture of what's listed as just normal scenario event and critical scenario event, because when you draw that card, you're just going to reference your scenario sheet. So that way, that card changes depending on your scenario. Just a very easy way to do it. But most of them are just specific to that card, and they will do various things like mess with your production, or they may make you put down one of these leak tokens on a room, or even a shutdown completely token. So if you have a leak token sitting on a room during the supply phase, production phase, you'll just say lose an extra energy. Even if your energy supply is at 0 or higher, you would still lose because you're leaking energy somewhere. Or if you have shut down a module completely, you have to adjust your things accordingly until you get it turned back on. So this aquaponic system, if I were to install it, I would get to increase my production level of oxygen 1, decrease my water supply 1 because the plants need water, increase my food supply by 2, and decrease my energy by 1. If I shut this down, all of those have to go back. And you have the worst one of all, your emergency supplies leak. This is one of the biggest counters in the game, because if this ever gets to 0, you lose the game. The rest of these, if they get down to 0, for every one that you would need to spend, you start losing emergency supplies. And let me tell you, these look like they're really high up on the list right now, but they go down very quickly, and it's pretty hard to get them back up. So you're essentially racing against these just dropping all the way to 0, and then this thing dropping all the way to 0. All right, so that's basically everything you see out here on the board. Also, on your turn, they give you a nice variety of characters. So each person in the game is going to have a unique character that has a movement statistic, a hand limit number, and a special ability. Now, the movement statistic was okay. Like, this guy here has a movement of 3. Most of the time I was only moving him 1 or 2. Most of these guys have a 1 or 2, at least a 2, except for the programmer here. The mechanical technician, though, with a 5 hand limit is huge. Or even the commander with a 6, let me tell you, that is big time. Or the architect has 6. So those do make a difference. But what I really loved is the special abilities on each one of these cards. There wasn't a single one in the deck that I wasn't like, ooh, I'd love to have that one. Ooh, I'd love to have that one. My first game, I dealt out 5 randomly myself and had to pick 3. And I was like, okay, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. Okay, I was like, all right, well, I didn't make any decisions because all of them have a special ability that's worth playing. So that's a big bonus for the game. Almost all of the characters that I played with in my solo game, which I'll touch on how to play that shortly, I used the person's special action when it was their turn each time. So big bonus there. Love to see it when a special action is actually useful and you get excited about it. All right, so you've got your person. You start the game with 2 cards, and on your turn you can do several actions. There's this double-sided card here that you can see. There's a lot of actions, but they're not hard to remember. They're pretty simple. Let's go over them right now. You can draw a card. You can simply take one of the face-up cards, or you can draw this one here. If you take one of these, you replace it with the next one on the deck. Super simple. You can recycle these 2 cards. So as an action, it's a little costly, but you can discard these and put out 2 new ones. You can transfer a card. So as long as your pawn is on the same card as another pawn, you can swap cards with them. I'm going to skip deploy module here for a second. You can move. So as the game goes along, you're going to be, well, that's not a good one because that's an item. That's another item. Okay. You will be building out your space station here with these modules. So this is an item card, and this is a module card. And so as you build out these modules, you have to build into an empty adjacent space. So if I wanted to build right now, I could only build here. At this point, I would have to move to build here. And as things need repairing, we'll need to move into those rooms to repair them. So the move action is when you can take an action and move up to your move value to get to a different room. You can also, once you're in a room, produce the supplies in that room. So if you were in this hydrogen fuel cell room, you could gain 1 electricity because that's the type of room you're in. You can shut down a room, which may sound silly, but if you are, say, high up on energy and you're sitting here and here and you're just one thing away from water, you could say, come over here. You could shut down this room. Actually, this would have to be way up here. If you shut down this room, this goes 1, 2, 3, but this goes up 1. because we just swap everything, and all of a sudden you've won the game. So there are reasons sometimes for you specifically to shut down a room. And the last thing you would do is repair a room. So if one of these leak tokens was in a room and you were in that same room, you would spend an action to repair. Super simple, right? So yes, you have this reference card and it seems like a lot. I think it's 8 actions total, but they're not hard. It's not hard to remember what the possibilities are. It's not tough to think about what you need to do. So let's talk about deploying a module. That's one of the most important actions in the game. And so let's just say, for example, this is my hand of cards, and I want to deploy this one here, the hydrogen fuel cell. I think that it would behoove me to have these changes in production levels. What I need to do is I need to discard 2 cards from my hand that both are red. So I've got 1. What I would need to do in this case, hopefully something like that would be showing up. I could simply spend an action to draw a card, so there's 1 action. Then I would spend another action to deploy this module. I have to then discard these 2 cards out of my hand to deploy that module. By doing so, I get to adjust levels. So this would go down, this would go up, and this would go up. All right. You don't mess with supplies until the end of your turn. Okay, you just have messed with production levels when you add a module to your base. You don't move into it automatically. So if you were here and you built this, you still stay here on the home base room. You would have to spend a move action to move in here, and then say spend a produce action to gain 1 energy. But that's it. I just covered all the actions in the game. Now, after you have taken your turn, which one of the things I think is very simply elegant about this game is that they just give you 4 of these action tokens. A lot of games will give you 4 per player. So this game can handle up to 5 players. That means they would be giving you 20 of these tokens, which really seems wasteful. In this instance, it says, all right, whose turn is it? It's your turn. I'm going to pass you these 4 tokens. Now you're the active player. Go. Next person, I'm going to pass you these 4 tokens. Now you're the active player. So I think that's just a really elegant touch to just not waste cardboard, to be honest with you. After you've taken your 4 actions, you're going to draw one of these event cards, and the event card is going to tell you something like, hey, place a water leak on a blue module. Well, I don't have any blue modules out, so I kind of get a pass. But if I did, let's just, I can't find one here now, of course. If I did have one out, I would simply have to take this and put it there. Sometimes it says in unoccupied ones. Sometimes it gives you the choice. And not every one is a leak token. Sometimes these will make you sick. And so your player has to have a certain number of, let's see if I can find one. Anemia. Keep this card next to your character until you have 3 green cards in hand. While you are anemic, your hand limit is reduced by 2. So just some interesting events. Some of them stick around. Some of them are just one-time effects. After the event phase is when you deal with your supply level phase. So events that create leaks will immediately affect your supply. You have to take into account any leak tokens that are out on the board and your supply level. You reduce everything down. As long as you're up here in the positive with supplies, you're safe. But once you start dipping into the negatives, for every supply you can't lose, you lose emergency supplies. If you lose all your emergency supplies, you lose. And that's the only way to lose the game, is your emergency supplies dips down here. But that happens very fast, ladies and gentlemen, faster than you might think. You win the game as soon as all of these tokens are at 0. The last thing I wanted to touch on, because I finally found some, are your protocol cards. So these are the cards that the scenario specified how many are going to be shuffled into the deck at the beginning of the game during setup. You can see that these give you an action you can take, and it says play anytime not an action. So you don't even have to be on your turn to play this card, but you can also spend it as any color resource card when deploying a module. So take your pick. That's why they are wilds, because they can be played anytime for their action, or you can use them as any resource type when building a module. That, ladies and gentlemen, is it. Let me quickly talk about how easy it is to play this game solo. So in solo, what you're going to do is take 3 pawns and you're going to choose 3 characters. I think the rule book says deal out 4. I think I dealt myself out 5, but basically you're going to deal yourself out a certain number and choose 3. Let me find the 3 that I picked. I picked the laborer, who allows you to do the produce supplies action for free. The civil engineer I really like, because when you deploy a module, you get to keep back one of your cards. You have to have the card to begin with, but then you don't have to discard it. And the mechanical technician is great. He allows you to take a repair action for free. But again, all of these guys in here have actions that are worth taking. But you're going to spread these guys out. You're going to assign each one of them a color. So our laborer is pink, our civil engineer is white, and our mechanical technician is black. You're going to draw 2 cards just like everybody else would, but your hand of cards is used by all 3 of these characters. Now what I like to do when I'm playing solo is take just any token and put it on the active player so I can keep up with who is the active character, and you just keep going through the rotation one after the other, taking turns. When it's the laborer's turn, only then can I use the laborer's special action. In this instance, the pink pawn is the only one I can move around. It's the only one I can, repair stuff with, produce stuff with. I can only build modules off of from where this individual is. I will then, at the end of the laborer's turn, draw an event card, produce supplies, and this token passes. Then the civil engineer, so in this case white, is the only one I'm moving around. His special ability is the only one I'm paying attention to. What's interesting to note is that each of their hand limits in this case is different. So when you get to the civil engineer, at the end of your turn, you need to have only 4 cards in your hand. If you had more than 4, you would just discard down to 4 at your leisure or your choice. Then you would move on to the mechanical technician. Mechanical technician has a hand limit of 5, so you can actually end your turn with more cards in your hand when you pass to the laborer. Now the laborer is okay to have more than 5 cards in their hand at the beginning and during their turn. It's just at the end of their turn that they have to discard down to 4. So if you have someone like the mechanical technician, you can stack up your hand and pass along a big hand to somebody with a smaller hand limit to help them out. But that is the only difference. You're essentially playing a 3-player game. But you're all using the same hand of cards, so you don't have to keep up with, oh, you've got this cards, you've got this cards, and you've got this cards. I'm going to pick up this pile now and deal with it. I'm going to pick up this pile now and deal with it, so on and so forth. Some people might think that is harder because you are seeing less cards over the course of the game. I think it's easier because I can just keep working towards what do I need to do next. Oh, I need to raise my oxygen level production. So I'm going to focus on getting a card like this one that raises my oxygen level. And then I'm going to focus on getting 2 blue cards. And I will just keep, working towards that. And it doesn't matter whose turn I end up on at the end of the day. As long as I have the right setup, that person I'll put in a position to deploy the module. So I think it's a really elegant, super simple, excellent way to play this solo. This is a cooperative game to begin with. This is a cooperative survival game. So let's give you my thoughts on the game. I'm going to talk about components first. The components are fine. The artwork is okay. It's not anything that I'm staring at a card for several seconds before I put it down just because I want to awe at the artwork. The artwork's all right. This board, I love the board for its functionality. Dual layer, awesome. The fact that these are like large circles and this is smaller squares works perfect. I love the fact that they are brightly colored here and all of the colors are distinctly different. Beyond that though, they couldn't put like any other fun artwork on the board. It's just very drab looking. Some people don't care about that stuff, but it's not doing in the game any favors. Neither is, like the aesthetic artwork or like this scenario sheet. The functionality of it is on point. It gives you everything you need to know very clearly right there. This side's okay, but I mean, I would rather have this be blown up full with a tiny little text box and not have this. This is way too much science data that means nothing to me. I would rather see full-blown art across the whole thing. I can see it creeping around the edges. Give me more of it. So, but in that, the components are fine. These action tokens are really nice, good size, very easy to flip and turn over. There's not a whole lot of materials to the game. It's a very, literally lightweight game. This board, which is the exact size it needs to be, being the biggest thing in the box. I do like that these scenario cards are nice and big too. I mentioned this in a recent review, but let me show you the color choices for the pawns here. The pawns are fine. Little crew member meeples would be fun, but are not necessary. But why, on God's green earth, do you have an off-white and a white, and then a brown, dark brown, and a black? Why are these your player colors? Come on, people. Look at how colorful this board is. It's boring colorful, but at least it's colorful. It is almost impossible to tell these two pieces apart. So I guarantee you, those two will always stay in the box if I'm playing with 3 players, and this guy will come out if I'm playing with 4. When I'm playing with 5 players, I may spray paint this guy and color in my card, because this is ridiculous. What is going on? That's one of my few gripes about the game, is the player color pawn choices. Why are we not making them more distinctly different? Alright, let's talk about the gameplay. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this game gives me some Terraforming Mars feelings, it gives me some Robinson Crusoe feelings, and it gives me some Marvel Champions feelings. Why is that? Well, let's just work backwards. Marvel Champions should be pretty straightforward, because to play a card, I have to spend cards from my hand. In this case, it's even more specific. Usually in Marvel Champions, it's just chuck 1 or 2 cards to cover the 2 energy you need. Every now and then you need something specific. This one requires more specific cards. So a lot of times you're drawing cards into your hand simply because of the symbol up here. But then there's other times where you're like, I really need to get a module out there. I've got both of these cards in my hand. I really want to keep both of them, but you got to give up one. Now, most games you will go through this deck and just reshuffle it, and so you'll see these cards again. But making those tough choices throughout the game of having to lose cards in your hand just to simply pay for something gives me that Marvel Champion feel. Some people may really appreciate that. Terraforming Mars should be very obvious, but it's got that, Exoworld, terraforming a planet type of feel where you're raising these levels. In Terraforming Mars, it's basically raising the oxygen level and the temperature and the water level. So this one adds another one. Terraforming Mars definitely feels more complex than this one. This one's very simple, would be very easy to teach in my opinion. But the fact that you're trying to play cards that essentially raise these up, occasionally might even lower them down, feels very Terraforming Mars-esque. And then last but not least, Robinson Crusoe. Because at the end of the day, these cubes do almost nothing but go down. They just plummet the entire game, and it is a race to see if you can push up your production levels to keep these from getting all the way to the bottom. Also in Robinson Crusoe, I loved how the various scenarios change things up. This honkin' set of cards here makes it gives this game replayability. Because each one of them changes up the setup, changes up the ambient conditions, changes up how many cards you're going to see, all of it. Beautiful amount of scenarios in the game. I think that's wonderful. And If you go get the game now from Tabletop Tycoon, they are including the first expansion, the Trappist I expansion, which you can see I haven't even delved into, but it's giving you more condition tokens. Looks like 4 more scenarios and a whole bunch more cards. I haven't even dipped into this yet. So let me tell you what I hope is in that pack, or what I hope to see from expansions. This is the few things that I feel like this game is lacking, but can easily add in the future if Starling Games sticks with this game. I would love to see more diverse cards, really, at the end of the day. That's all I'm looking for. I'm fine with the event cards and their diversity. Some of them attack the players, some of them throw leaks out, some of them just do stuff messing with your supplies entirely. I would love to see more unique items in the game. I would like to see less modules. Honestly, I realize that it's important to put modules out, but also like there's also a lot of just hydroponic farms and water recovery systems. After a while, you have seen all of the blues and greens and reds. But what I don't see is a lot of items or modules that can utilize your supply. So especially at the beginning of the game, you have lots of supply. So maybe you might risk spending some oxygen, pure oxygen from your supply, to get something out or to get a benefit from that, because then you're early on in the game, you're going to try and push this up and earn it back. Instead, most of the game seems to just be losing your supply to this, your production level, and the only reason you would gain it back is to, because you're going to continue losing it. I would love to see cards where I can actually use my supply for more than just it sitting there and me losing it. So really, that was only one thing. But just, some more variety in the cards. This game is pretty quick. It can get to the point sometimes where you just feel stuck, like you're just one away, but to move this one up, you're going to have to move this one down, and so on and so forth. And so again, I would love to see cards where they're not all... Give me more cards that just give me like a one-time bump up, or, temporary bump up or something like that. Or, bump up not at the cost of something else. Who knows? Make them super expensive. I don't know. But for the most part, the game plays pretty fast. Your individual turns, even though you're taking 4 actions, are very quick. Because usually it's like, all right, I'm going to draw 3 cards and hope I can build a module. Or I'm going to run around and heal this, and pick up a supply here. Very Pandemic-esque, where you had, I think it's 3 actions on every turn of Pandemic, but they went like that because usually it's very straightforward what you want to do, and to push yourselves towards winning. So there's another game that you can compare this to, very Pandemic-esque. So if you enjoy any of those games, Pandemic, Robinson Crusoe, Terraforming Mars, even Marvel Champions, you should check this one out. It is a Starling Games, so the production level is spot on. Again, my only complaint was that these, I don't understand the color choices, and this is a little drab. It's just a little boring, but it's super functional, super nice quality, super thick, dual layer board here. These tokens are spot on. Everything works. The functionality of everything is amazing. So I would definitely go give this game a look. Especially now, if you go to tabletoptycoon.com and get you that free initial expansion along with the game. I will put a link in the description to that website below. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a great day.